Contrary to public perception, the day-to-day life of a lawyer goes beyond the 9 to 5. Most people are surprised that, on average, an attorney at a large law firm works more than 50 to 60 hours a week. Lawyers have an incredible amount of influence over our society as a whole, and of course, their clients' lives. They deal with unpleasant scenarios and sometimes people. Oftentimes, lawyers are tasked with obtaining favorable outcomes based on less than favorable facts. Such a job requires attention to detail, creativity, time value, and unyielding competence. It's easy to see how such a demanding career can be taxing on the psyche. We're partnering today with Tea Hoffman to lead the discussion on navigating this topic. Thank you, Tea, for joining us.
And so I really am passionate about what I do with lawyers and for lawyers, and I was pleased to be asked to actually provide some information for you guys today. So where did it all begin for me? I grew up, just to give you my story quickly, in a very small town in Tennessee, Waynesboro, Tennessee. So if you listen to country music, you've heard about a no red light town. I actually grew up in a no red light town. You could just, well, you do have to go around the town square, but we really had bonfires by the creek because there was nothing else to do. The interstate was 74 miles away from us. That was the closest interstate.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, you know, it was very rural. And so in 1973, we walked to school and back, and I graduated with the same 67 people that I started kindergarten with, believe it or not. And, but we're walking home from school, and on the back of this auto trailer kind of carrier thing was this beautiful green Corvette Stingray. And I had never seen anything like it. Just to give you some perspective, my parents were driving a gold mustard colored Maverick, Ford Maverick, 2-door with vinyl seats and no air conditioning. So, and we had one car. So, you know, I see this car and I've never seen anything like it. So I go rushing over to the guys that are unloading the car, whom I knew. And I said, you know, whose car is this and what kind of car is it? And they were taking plastic off of the windshield and off of the windows. And he opens the door to this Corvette. And first of all, it opens differently from the way I'd ever seen another door open, but the smell of the leather, I mean, it was intoxicating. I was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like this. It has a wooden dash. I mean, it is fantastic. Okay. So I'm like, who on earth drives this car? Whose car is this? They said, well, he doesn't live here yet, but we've actually got a lawyer that's moving to town. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. And this lawyer ordered this car to be delivered. I said, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing ever. Okay. So I go home that night and I said, and if they drive that, that's what I want to be. And he was absolutely right. I had no idea what a lawyer did or, you know, any of that. But my image of what a lawyer was going to be like was someone who drove a really nice sports car. You know, I think for lots of us, the impression of what the practice of law was going to be like is really formed by a lot of these things. And so, Shanae, let me ask you this question. Why did you want to become a lawyer, and what kind of built that impression in your mind?
Honestly, I graduated college in 2009,
Yeah.
you know, during the recession.
Right.
And I didn't have no other options. I graduated with a sociology degree and a journalism degree, and newspapers were folding left and right at that time.
Right.
I wanted to be a beat reporter for the Boston Red Sox. That was like my lifelong goal. And I was like, well, that's probably not going to happen at this point. Right. So let me just go with my backup plan. And law school was my backup plan. Okay. So I kind of just fell into this.
No, I think that's it. But it was more of a survival. You had to do something, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Chris, what about you?
I was rescued from a life of boring environmental scientist work by a professor who returned to Clemson University my junior year after having a 3-year sabbatical to go to law school in Montana at Montana State University. And he came back to continue teaching in the environmental science department and told me that he had never met anybody at in his department that needed to go to law school more than I did. And I said, I don't know any lawyers in my family. I've never even heard of a lawyer going to law school. I don't even know how you would do that. He said, well, I just finished doing it, so let me show you how to do it. And that's how it happened.
And so let me ask you this, Chris, when you started, what your impression was going through law school versus what practicing then was actually like? Was it the same or different?
Oh, mine was exactly like everyone else's. Practicing law is nothing like law school.
Right. Right. And Shanae, is the same with you?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. And so, and you know, for Liz and Sierra, I'm sure you guys have heard this before from other lawyers that, you know, what they set you up for and even what your expectations are watching TV is not what actually happens, you know, when you go to a law firm. So, just to give you some, you know, grasp on what's happening today, believe it or not, there are 1.37 million active licensing. I used to be a speaker for a living. There are 1.37 million actively licensed attorneys in the United States. That means actively licensed, okay? That's a lot of lawyers, all right? So what does that mean for everybody? That means there's a lot of competition, right, out there for legal work. One of the things I greatly admire about your firm, and Chris, I want to get you on a podcast that I do, is how you've created this practice, this kind of niche area, and how you're marketing that. I think it's fantastic. But there are 38,000 law students that entered law school in 2018. And why is that relevant? Well, that's relevant because when will those people be graduating? This next year. So there'll be even more people entering the market, right? And then 33,000 are predicted to graduate. 33,000 are predicted to graduate in 2018, which is up year over year. We don't have the 2019 numbers yet, believe it or not, because there weren't hardly any graduations in 2020 and the 2019 numbers were delayed. So it's just an interesting statistic, but it hasn't changed a whole lot, but it continues to inch up a little bit. And Shanae, your experience is exactly right. There is a gap for most law firms between lawyers that are, and I'd be interested to know this in your firm as well, the lawyers that are between 45 and 55, there's not as many lawyers in that age range as other age ranges. And the reason for that is because the economy was doing well during that time and people weren't choosing to go to law school as an alternative. And so it has left a gap. And that is actually a problem for a lot of law firms. 73% of associates felt they were prepared to practice. And in what I do, just to give you an idea, I do a program for associates, first through third year associates. And I have very few law firms who they'll say, oh, I don't want to spend the money for teaching them, you know, some of these soft skills and how to practice law because, you know, they're baby lawyers. But the reality is those lawyers usually after 2.7 years, 2 years and 7 months, they leave their law firms. And it costs law firms almost $700,000 to lose those lawyers. So investing in lawyers early, yes. So here's kind of the results. And this is from an ABA study that was just released in 2019. 28% of lawyers admit they're depressed, okay? That's much higher than the average population, which is about at 19%. 12% have suicidal tendencies. 19% are being treated for anxiety. 21% suffer from alcohol addiction. 16% use a sedative either to sleep or relax. 6% admit using hard drugs, and 21% used hard drugs in the last year, and 52% are dissatisfied with their career. Now, again, this is not just lawyers. This also is applicable to staff. So as you think about these numbers, one of the things I always tell people is I had a coaching client that committed suicide about 3 years ago, and I would never have guessed it either. Although she did tell me she was overwhelmed, but I thought she was dealing with it. Be mindful of each other. Be mindful of each other. When you see somebody who's coming in late all the time, or you see somebody who seems to be overwhelmed or stressed out, or you sense that they are, ask them if they're okay. And if they say they're okay, but they continue to display unwellness, talk to them. Get them to someone who can get them some help or who they feel comfortable talking to. Because I do think a lot of lawyers really go through this whole deal where they're like, how can I hate this? I've prepared my whole life to do this. I spent all this money to do this, and I'm not, for some reason, and it could be a multitude of things, I'm not either happy with the practice or I'm not happy at home, or they could be suffering from a lot of the things that we've already talked about, depression, anxiety, all of those things. And so for lawyers, I think it's important to understand that it's not your fault. And this is interesting because this was actually in a law review article from back in the early 1900s, where this guy talked about how the practice of law had become more of a business and not something where people were out searching for justice and to resolve things for these clients. And it is, I used to tell people all the time, we are a business service provider. And I have people say, oh no, I am a counselor at law. And obviously, we've been told in law school that we're counselors and that we're advocates and that we're all of these things. But if we don't run our businesses well and we don't run our lives well, we're not actually going to be able to continue to practice and serve the clients that we want to serve. So it's critically important that we think about our practices as a business. Some of them don't. This is an actual coaching client, and she's in Manhattan. And she's one day said, I pick up the phone, hey, Emily, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I really just feel like I'm going to explode. I just react. I'm constantly in a reactive mode. And I've lost control of my life at work and at home. And, for those people, I usually I'm quiet and then let them keep talking. Because one of the things that they don't want you to do is solve their problem right at that moment. They really just want you to listen. So when you see people who are feeling that way, just know that many times they don't want you to necessarily solve the problem. You've got to figure out, they've got to figure out what it is that they need to do to change. And you may ask some open-ended question like, what is it that you think would make your situation better? But don't say, I think these things would make your situation better. Okay? Because you really don't know the entire situation 99% of the time. And many people think, well, I just want to be happy. And how many of us have said, I want to be happy. I just want to be happy. Well, I will tell you that happiness is a fleeting emotion. And joy is when you go home and you realize that you've got people there in your home who love you, or you walk into your law office and you're surrounded by people who actually care about you, not just the work product that you're going to produce. All right. Joy is an internal feeling of peace. Okay. And it's independent of the circumstances. You could have a headache that day, but you walk into that office and you feel like a warm blanket's been put around you because you're surrounded by people who actually care about you. Joy is wanting what you already have. All right. And it's an inner feeling of contentment. And I tell you, it is foundational. If you are a joyful person, and how many of you all know people who are just joyful people, regardless of their circumstances? Raise your hand. All right. And do you want to be around those people, Sierra?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because joy is contagious. Happiness is a fleeting emotion. So always remember, how many of you feel like you're on a hamster wheel when you go to bed at night? Your mind is just turning and turning and turning. All right. Yeah. Yeah. And many times that's because we haven't really trained our minds to turn off. So, try the Calm app on your phone. Try to meditate. Try to get into a routine every night, a bedtime routine that doesn't include watching unsolved mysteries where people are getting killed, for example.
That's me.
So, those things do not lead to restful sleep. Okay.
That's true.
So, I will say sleep is critically important. Communication communicating what I need and what I want. That's within our control. But many of us are too afraid to ask our significant other for what we need and want.
The differences between happiness and joy is kind of a life-changing thing for me. Because I kind of feel like the past, let's say 4 or 5 years, I've been asking myself, I've been telling myself, I really want to be happy. Like, I feel like I'm not happy. I feel like I'm stressed out and depressed a lot. And just hearing, the differences between the two, that joy is a constant. Joy is something that's inside of you that you feel regardless of what the outcome is. That's really, that's really eye-opening for me. And I hope that I can implement that into my life going forward.
I think that's great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
To me, joy and happiness has been a concept that really, the whole point of this seminar with you really is the idea that this is a never-ending, always evolving struggle, challenge, especially in the legal profession. Trying to find it is, chasing joy and happiness in the legal profession is the topic of seminars that you could watch from now until Tuesday and never stop. It to me is an elusive concept that really requires, just a lot of attention to detail, a lot of actual caring about trying to find it, and really being cognizant of what it takes to be personally happy and what you're really looking for in your life. And that is a never-ending, changing battle too. You, in your 30 years of practicing law, are a vastly different lawyer, or at least member of the bar, than you were 20 years ago or 10 years ago, as all of us are. So what makes you happy today is totally different than it was 10 years into your 30-year career. I think that's the key to me, is that chasing joy and happiness is always about remembering that it's not the same. It doesn't stay the same. What makes you happy always changes, just like life does.
I agree with that. And I think, Shanae, to your point, defining what true success is for most of us, because I will tell you, success for me at the beginning of my practice was, and even in my late 30s, I was in a big law firm. I was making lots of money doing all of these things. And I will say, I still wanted that Corvette, and I think one of the things that age brings is some additional wisdom. But I wish I would have found that wisdom earlier by just slowing down and saying, okay, is that Corvette really going to make me feel at peace and make me feel successful? Hell's bells, I can't even go to the grocery store and buy groceries. How am I going to go to Costco in a Corvette? Really, where am I going to put those paper towels? So, all of those kinds of things are things you have to step back from and really think about. What does success mean for you? And what is your it? So I hope that you will take time to actually think about these things as you move forward. And Liz, again, I just want to thank you guys, and Sierra and Shanae and Chris, for your attention today. I really appreciate your time and attention. What questions do you guys have of me that I might be able to answer for you?
I have a question for all of you guys, actually. What types of symptoms of constant stress do you feel that you're under working in the legal profession?
I think the stress that you come to experience in any practice of law that involves real courtroom work in particular is the pressure of deadlines. It's an ever-present part of any litigator's life. If you're in court, everything that involves a court case has a deadline of some sort or another, and managing all of those creates a nonstop presence in the back of your mind, if nothing else. But I think really one of the biggest issues with that a lot of my non-lawyer friends and family just don't get is it trains you to be a last-minute person. Everything gets done at the last minute if you're a lawyer, because that's how you live. If you're a litigator anyway, you live by the deadline, and if the deadline isn't tomorrow, then I don't worry about it until today. And lots of people who are big long-term planners and thinkers, you can be a long-term strategy person like I am, but yet still I live moment to moment, and deadlines become just how you operate. And I think that's a really weird unusual lawyeristic characteristic that many people just don't get.
That's good. Shanae, what about you?
I'd say the strive for perfection. I've been a perfectionist pretty much my entire life. And one of the things about being a lawyer is if you're not perfect, that's going to come back to bite you in some way. Whether it be, you made a mistake on a complaint or a pleading, whether you filed a lawsuit in the incorrect party's name or whatever the case may be. Everything has a consequence when you are imperfect in the legal realm. And I understand that nobody is perfect. We're all humans, we all make mistakes, but I kind of feel like just by virtue of being a lawyer, that pressure is on me to attain the unattainable, which is perfection. But, I try to strive to get as close to perfect as I can. But, at the end of the day, I do make mistakes, and that's okay. And sometimes it's hard for me to accept that. Like me, I made a mistake. Oh my God, like that's I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've struggled with while being a lawyer. And I've been a lawyer for almost 7 years now, so not terribly long. But I think that's probably my number one thing.
Shanae, are you the oldest in your family, child?
Yep.
You tell.
That was a good observation.
Yeah,
T, what about you?
I think I was going to say deadlines before Chris said deadlines. And even though I am not a litigator, I'm sitting here. So in my to-do file over here, all my coaching clients have folders like this, and they get homework, every single week between their coaching sessions. And so today I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I do about 12 coaching sessions in a week. So I have 8 of these that are what I consider to be past due, and they're not actually past due until Friday. But because, and Shanae, I'm not the oldest, I'm the youngest, but because I was in the Army for so many years, 15 minutes early means you're on time.
Absolutely.
And so, I always have this thing, if I still have these sitting over here on Friday, I'm a loser, that I have to be always ahead of the game, and that I always have to be better than everybody else at everything, And so I think it's a combination of both the idea of the competitiveness within myself and then the deadlines that I self-impose. I mean, if I don't get these out till Friday, I'm not going to lose a coaching client. And I often say to myself, no one died. It's not like somebody died, If I didn't get this done, I mean, so what? I take them home on Saturday and work on them and, drinking coffee at the breakfast table, but in my mind, I have failed if I don't get them done by Friday.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. What do you feel like you do to combat like the symptoms of stress you may have, like when you start to get overwhelmed because you have them sitting there on Friday afternoon?
So my goal, and Chris, I need to talk to you about your time management skills. I was a Franklin Covey focused trainer I did 121 time management classes for them, but that whole reactive mindset, I totally, resonate with that. But what I do, I have a goal on Friday afternoon. Of course, I live on the lake and I have a boat within about 20 yards of where I'm looking right now. And my goal is to be on that boat at 3:00 every Friday afternoon. And if my whole thing, if I have to get here early on Friday morning, I go out by myself on Friday afternoon, and I literally anchor and I swim, and I have 2 beers, Michelob Ultra, if y'all want to join me sometime, and listen to country music. And then I come back and I'm just totally ready for the weekend. I feel like that's kind of my way of letting the pressure cooker little top off of the lid.
What do you do for work-life balance, but what do you do to combat the stresses that work presents you?
I play with my dog.
That's good.
I know, right? Yeah. Really, I spend a lot of time. My biggest thing has always been to totally shut out the brain process as much as I can after I leave. Anybody that knows me knows that I stay on my email all the time because there's always stuff to be dealt with.
Yep.
But being, for me, that's never the distractor. Like being able to respond actually gives me a sense of satisfaction. Being able to address something, if it's a critical issue that comes up at 8:30 at night, then it's still critical. If you're the owner of the business,
Right.
that matters. But being able to just sit and do nothing all evening long, that's usually my, it's a forced decompression. Like I don't spend my evenings very often doing anything other than sitting on the porch with a cocktail, cooking dinner. I do a lot of cooking. That's one of my outlets is, it's a mental break for me is just cooking things. But, watching, binging Netflix, whatever. All those things, just turning my brain off. There's some days where, if it's a really complicated day, I'll ride home in silence. Like I'll spend 35 minutes driving home with no sound. And those are, kind of just shut your brain off and let it rebound, let it, re-inflate itself from being worked hard all day long.
Mm-hmm.
I can say I do not know how to do that. I do not know how to turn my brain off. It's always going all the time. If it's not about, like work, then it's about, something I'm passionate about, it's an ever evolving, like thing. So it may not be turned on with work, but it may be turned on, with something else. But
yeah. Liz, what do you feel what do you feel are your main stressors from work, and then how do you combat those?
I put a lot of stress on myself. I understand Shanae when she's saying, perfection. I definitely am a perfectionist because in my line of work, you can't really afford to make a mistake because then it's there for our 3,000 viewers and followers to see it.
Yeah.
So because of that really stresses me out. And I have the weight of, our brand and our brand message and what that looks like, to everyone and their perception of it. And that's huge because like, to me, this is like Chris's baby, and it's like, take my baby and make it better. And I'm like, okay. But I have a lot of support. I have a safety net. I'm constantly educating myself and just becoming better. But like Chris, I play with my dog. I do yoga. I go to the, kickboxing, Muay Thai bag that I have outside. So I try to find healthy ways to blow off steam. And, like Shanae, to Shanae's point, just be like, it's okay. Like it's fine, so.
That's good. So at L&B, we know that wellness isn't just our physical or even mental and emotional well-being or health, but that it also encompasses a bunch of other dimensions like spiritual, social, occupational types of well-being. What would you guys say your strength in wellness is, and what is your weakness in wellness, or something that you want to get better at?
All of it. All of it. Being at Loebsack and Brownlee does give me the opportunity to, actually work on a lot of things, like not just my lawyer skills, but my people skills, and I'm forever grateful for that. Like, this is the one place I've worked at where, before COVID happened, of course, FaceTime with clients was like, a major thing. Like, we have all these events we go to, after hours networking and, different events and things like that. And it forced me to step outside of my introvert bubble, I guess. I'm still an introvert, but, this job has helped me in more ways than I think, I realize sometimes. And I'm really thankful for that.
I started a garden on my back porch in my apartment, and I have tomatoes and green peppers.
Nice.
I have mint now, So
Oh, yay!
make my mojitos.
I was about to say, I'm coming to you for some mint because I need some for my mojitos.
So I have one last question for everyone. I just wanted everyone to go around and give us all one wellness tip or one wellness takeaway that you would encourage people in the legal profession to try to do. So who wants to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
I don't think folks talk about this enough, especially lawyers, but I think it's really important that when lawyers are, undergoing some sort of, crisis, it's so like it is okay to reach out to any of the lawyer assistance programs that are out there, like bar cares and things like that. That is okay. Those resources are there to help you, and a lot of the times we as lawyers, because we're so type A and, competitive, and we don't, we want to uphold this particular image. We don't want to admit when we just had enough, and it is okay. Like, being a lawyer is one of the most difficult things I've ever done, but I do love it. I do love it. And I just want people to know that even though we might be competitive by nature and we might be adversaries in the courtroom, at the end of the day, it's just a job. And I will be more than happy to go out to lunch or dinner or for drinks with any of the people that I face in the courtroom. Like, it's okay to let that guard down. There's nothing wrong with that.
I love that. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, vulnerability. I think that's difficult for anyone, but to Shanae's point, a lot of like my perception of lawyers has definitely changed since I've been at L&B, because like I thought that all lawyers were like in these super tight button-up suits, and it was just, like this, everybody drives their black Mercedes, sorry, Chris, because you have one, but, but, it's like, I thought that it was, I remember the first time I saw one of the partners and they came in and it was just like, kind of chill. It was like, like a t-shirt and like jeans. And I was like, that's not like what I thought, like what I pictured. And I know that L&B is definitely, we're not your ordinary law firm. I mean, we definitely live up to that, but, and I love that about us, but I would just like for everyone to be more vulnerable. I think that that's something that we can all work on. And with that vulnerability, practice empathy, because, it takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable. To say what's going on with you, say what you're experiencing, and set up those healthy boundaries, to be like, I can't do this right now.
I would say being kind to people and going out of your way to be kind to people all the time. I think we've all kind of been a little more kind to people during COVID, but, I try to practice in kindness, open doors for people. I pick up trash in the parking lot here if somebody's dropped trash and put it in the trash can. I try to play the smile game. I mean, it's interesting. If I smile like this, watch. Yeah. So see, you all smile. Right. And when we smile at each other, we release endorphins that are positive endorphins. I try to play the smile game with people. So when somebody passes me, I smile at them. And I think just generally, being empathetic towards people and, asking them, how are you doing today? And then actually not walking away as you're finishing the sentence.
Right.
Yeah.
How are you doing today? And stopping and letting them actually answer, and being a good listener, I think are all acts of kindness that we all should probably be more aware of and practice more.
I love that. And I agree with that. I just bought a shirt last night on Amazon. Don't tell my husband, that says be kind, and I plan on it all of the time. So
Good.
Chris, what is your takeaway you'd like to give everybody?
I think especially in the legal field, the most important thing that people need to realize is that this is a profession, it's a calling, and to me the biggest flaw that creates the most strife and tension for lawyers as a career is that they allow themselves to approach this profession in a way that makes it stressful in ways that aren't part of the job itself. They allow themselves to do things like force themselves to work late hours because they're a perfectionist, so they can't leave it at home, unlike what Sinead does. They force themselves to believe that it is a competition and I am here to do better than X, Y, or Z people that work with me. And so I'm going to add pressure and stress to my life. They work for law firms that create cultures that are based on pitting people against each other to see a survival of the fittest play out. Those are the sorts of things that making good decisions about where you practice law and how you practice law starts with you. You are under no obligation to go work for a big law firm where they thrive on competition and weeding out the weak and all of the bad things. That culture is a dinosaur, but yet people still keep buying into it for reasons that are of their own making. And I think the biggest part about what I would change in the profession is telling lawyers the most important message is go out and do the law for the things that make you feel good, not go out and do the law for the things that make you feel like you are doing what everyone else thinks you're supposed to be doing. That's a recipe for disaster.
All right, bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank
Take care,
you.
y'all.
Bye.
Okay, bye.